here are the top 11 picks. You see all those offensive playmakers up there near the top, couple of corners falling in line there at 9 and 10, and Justin Fields at number 11 overall. And here he is, the man of the hour, the great Todd McShay, who joins us live in the lower right of your screen. And the squad is ready with a ton of questions for you, McShay, but I will ask the first. And that is this. After a pro day where most people were impressed and excited and obviously a great college career, why is Justin Fields the one who seems to be sliding down this board?
Yeah, remember, this screening is not about where I rank the quarterbacks or any of these players. It's what I'm hearing when I talk to NFL teams. And I struggled. Let's go back to pick number 3. Pick 3 and pick 4 were the two most difficult picks of these 2 rounds that I had to do. And at 3, I initially thought it was going to be Trey Lance. Like, that was my initial reaction when San Francisco moved up to go get that pick. But ultimately, I've heard so many things from different people in the league about Mac Jones being the perfect fit for Kyle Shanahan. That might be the pick. So I went with Mac Jones there, even though I rank Mac Jones as the 5th quarterback in this class behind Trey Lance and behind Justin Fields. So it's not about Fields, falling or anything about his skill set. He is probably the most physically gifted quarterback in this class. The only issue when I talk to teams is that he, over 200 passes last year, 200 plus were off of his first read, and only 7 were him sitting in the pocket going from progression 1 to progression 2. So that's kind of an issue, and they also think, and I see the same thing on tape, is that he loves to see his receiver come open and doesn't anticipate enough throws. So that's where he has to improve. But we've seen plenty of quarterbacks, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, make huge improvements in the NFL as they've worked on their weaknesses. And I think that's what's going to happen with Fields because he's so gifted. He's such a good leader. He takes such a pro mentality to this, and he's very intelligent as well.
So that is the explanation for why you see it going there. And obviously, far worse things could happen to you than falling to a place where Bill Belichick and the Patriots wind up trading up to get you. But Dominique, I'll give you the first shot at this because I know you had a lot of thoughts on the possibility of Fields falling.
Yeah, the Fields falling is one thing, and I think Todd did a good job of answering the questions there. So I want to move it to Penei Sewell. Like, it blows my mind that Penei Sewell is going to fall behind all these guys because an offensive lineman like that is likely to hit. Like, O-lineman is the highest hit rate in the first round, wide receiver, lowest hit rate in the first round. If you look at the stats from last season, you look at the top performing receivers in the league, only a small fraction of them are first round picks. So it doesn't make sense to me to pass on what seems like a sure thing in Penei Sewell to get a receiver that you could likely find later in the draft. At least that's what the draft suggests. So could you explain to me why Sewell might fall all the way to the Chargers?
Listen, I understand your point, and I thought long and hard about Cincinnati at number 5 because they obviously need offensive line help. I mean, they couldn't protect Joe Burrow last year. He wound up with the ACL injury, and I understand it. But the way this thing falls with 5 quarterbacks in the top 11, and then 4 pass catchers, including Kyle Pitts, the tight end from Florida, you're talking 9 picks right there. And if Pitts goes 4, as I have him going to Atlanta here, and listen, they could wind up going with Justin Fields at that spot as well. But if Pitts goes 4, and you're staring at Jamar Chase, who had a single-season SEC record for receiving yards and receiving touchdowns with Joe Burrow at LSU in 2019 before he opted out this past year, it's tough to pass on him. So they need weapons, but they also need offensive line help. This offensive tackle class is really deep. I think they can get a tackle or a guard in the second round, but I would understand completely if they took Sewell at number 5.
Let me come back to the quarterbacks. Again, there's so much here, and we will continue to dive into the mock as we go. But let me bring you back quickly, Todd, here to the quarterbacks, because people will look at this and they will say, look at the skill set. Look at that a guy like Justin Fields, for example, brings relative to a guy like Mac Jones, who you are projecting to go ahead of him. You see him as your 5th quarterback in your board, just as far as how you rank them.
Right.
But you see him going so much higher in this, both in the order of quarterbacks and in the overall draft order, than you do a guy like Fields. People will look at that and they will be confused. How is it explained?
It's explained simply because, I mean, again, my first inclination when San Francisco moved up from 12 to 3 was this is a perfect spot for Trey Lance. He played 17 games at the FCS level, and he's going to need time to develop and adjust to the NFL game. You got Matt Ryan for at least 1 year, maybe 2 years. So possibly, he could go 4 if he doesn't go 3, and San Francisco's got Jimmy Garoppolo, who could be that bridge for a year as well. So those 2 spots are really intriguing for Trey Lance. But I went with Mac Jones simply because of people I've talked to in the league, and people who are reporting and kind of have good sources are saying that Mac Jones fits exactly what Kyle Shanahan wants. You think about Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, those type of quarterbacks. He is so intellectual. He is so accurate as a passer, but he's not nearly as athletic. He doesn't have the big arm as Lance or Fields in this year's draft class. So it was a difficult decision, but ultimately I went because of the information, and that information could change. We have a month between now and the draft, and as I dive in more and talk to more general managers and head coaches in the league, I'll find out more information. But right now it's just based off the information that I got.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.